2022 is upon us, so sit down with us and take your medicine. I'm Sadie.
And I'm Jacob.
And today, to ring in the new year, I am going to read you a fortune from a fortune cookie that I got yesterday. It's very topical. And it says, "There's nothing more dangerous than an idea if it's the only one you have."
Oh, okay.
Do you want me to read it again?
Yeah, read it again. Read it again.
One more time. There's nothing more dangerous than an idea if it's the only one you have.
All right. I didn't think that we'd be analyzing a fortune cookie like fortune, but so what I immediately think of obviously is ideology, right? Like ideology is literally almost a fixation on a singular idea. And if it's the only thing you have, I think that wording is pretty apt because it's getting at the fact that some people have a singular idea or a core idea that's part of their identity.
Right.
And if you can challenge that idea, then you're challenging the identity, right?
Exactly.
So it's, it's interesting.
It cuts to the heart of identity politics for sure. And usually when you get a fortune cookie, it's like the grammar's all off and the expression means nothing. Like somebody just threw words together. But this one, I was like, somebody in that factory thought it was appropriate to write that. Yeah, I thought it was cool.
Yeah,
and
well,
I always believe that fortune cookies choose me, so.
They reach out of the fortune cookie bucket and pick you up.
But I guess, kind of going off of that, like, let's start with some culture things.
Yeah.
Can we play, I want you to play the, frightening teach video.
Yeah.
But you probably have to mute it because I think she's got copywritten music on
Okay,
it.
so we're going to have to mute it and read the screen.
Yes. So I had to burden my eyes with this, so you have to burden your eyes with this.
All right, so it's playing.
To the parents who refuse to educate their children on queerness, I'm an openly non-binary trans preschool teacher. I talk to my students about pronouns, transness, gender expression, and sexuality.
All right, well, that's a doozy.
Yes.
Do you want to describe what this person looks like? I mean, guess if they have dyed hair.
I think it's dyed. It's in a hat, so it's hard to tell. But this person also had, the hair is dyed. It's pink. And they're wearing like a men's buttoned shirt over top of a really cropped shirt.
Yes.
And wearing glasses. They have slits in the eyebrows, both eyebrows.
Oh, yeah, the shaved eyebrow.
She has dots under her eyes that were done with eyeliner.
So you've heard of unibrow. Have you heard of quadribrow?
They interest you in 4 eyebrows. But the song that's playing behind it, the lyrics are, "You're gonna wish you had never met me." And
apt again.
It's very fitting. It's like, so you know that nobody wants to meet you.
Yeah.
And you're embracing it. But also, the problem is the very beginning where she says to all the parents who refuse to teach their kids, she's a preschool teacher. And it's not that parents are necessarily refusing to teach their kids about gay culture. They're 4.
Right.
They're 4. They don't even really fully understand boy or girl. They don't even know how to tie their shoes, or like they still have bathroom accidents.
Yeah, they still think it's gross when their parents kiss each other.
Ew.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Right, exactly. So it's like they're not refusing anything. They just are a parent and understand kids better than you and know that at a certain age, maybe when they actually start asking questions of their own volition, that's when you can have the conversation about it. But also, who are you to go behind parents' backs and teach the thing?
This is not, it's just not okay. This is not a topic that should be brought up to young children at all.
Preschoolers.
Like, this is...
What the hell?
You can't help but think these people, I don't want to be like libelous or anything, but there's a concern that this sort of thing is going to be latched onto by predators, right? Like if you're talking about, if you're not afraid to talk about sexuality with young children, especially made up sexuality and ideas, that's deeply disturbing to me. Like even the idea of teaching like biologically correct sex education to children that are prepubescent is like the grossest, like one of the grossest things I could even think of.
I remember even learning about puberty in like 8th grade,
Right.
and still being like,
Yeah, please make it go away.
Comfortable. Like I was the kid that had to raise my hand to put my head down because I'm like, I am so uncomfortable with this topic.
Why is Mrs. Johnson saying penis over and over again?
But also, I don't know. Was that last caption? Did she say genitals in that last caption?
Oh, let's go back.
Oh no.
Gender expression
and sexuality. 4-year-olds and any word with the root word of sex don't go together.
Yeah.
Remember when that was called grooming?
Yeah, no.
And we would fire those teachers?
Yep.
And now it's somehow okay to put posters up of things like this in your classroom.
So I have
another.
So it's interesting that you would bring up a freaky teach, because I have one here as well.
Oh, do you want to describe what this person looks like?
Oh, yeah. Well, guess if this person also has dyed hair.
That's our new game.
So actually,
guess if the person has dyed hair.
Actually, for people that can't see this, this person is exactly the kind of person that you think it is. This person is a little bit overweight.
Mm-hmm.
This person is a woman, supposedly, or are they them? Who knows?
Born a woman.
Yes, confused. This woman has dyed hair, which is like a teal or like a neon blue or something.
And some pink. It's multiple colors.
Oh, I didn't notice that. All right. And then guess if this person's wearing a mask while alone in their own car.
I'm going to say yes. I'm going to guess yes.
So this is the person we're dealing with. Anyway, let's give this a listen, and yeah, we'll see what this person has to say.
I don't want to hear the pronouns are too hard. I don't. I just heard a 4-year-old ask a 5-year-old, "Are you a girl today?" 5-year-old says, "Yeah." And 4-year-old says, "Okay."
All right, so this is obviously somebody celebrating their brainwashing of children.
Yeah.
That I almost don't have words for this. You were teaching kids a nonsensical ideology and then bragging on TikTok that you've totally corrupted their thinking.
Well, and she says she doesn't want to hear that it's too hard because 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds are parroting what the adults they spend most of their time with are saying. That's not the same thing as them understanding the concept.
Mm-hmm.
4-year-olds will repeat every curse word in the book if they've heard you say it.
And if you let them say it.
Yeah, true.
Right.
If you never correct them, they'll just keep saying it and keep parroting it, especially if you are praising them for parroting things that are obscene or obviously false.
Yeah, and obviously the problem too is that you can very easily see that this can lead to other corruptions, right? You can, if kids have a wild imagination, if they say, "I'm a dog today,"
Mm-hmm.
We're getting to the point now where if you identify as dog pronouns, I'm good boy, good girl, she boy, or whatever, I don't even know. If you identify as dog pronouns and you say, "I'm a dog," that's becoming more and more mainstream
In
now.
all ways except physical. I am a wolf.
Yes. That's becoming more and more mainstream in the rainbow crowd. And it's only a matter of time before that trickles down to the young children like it has now. And what then? Do we have to accept when a 4-year-old says, "I'm a dog"? No, you're not. No, you're not. You're 4.
I'm an astronaut. Well, you are still suffering the effects of gravity, so you're not an astronaut.
Yeah. You could be an
No.
astronaut if you applied yourself, or you can be a wolfkin.
Putting a pot on your head and saying I'm an astronaut does not make one an astronaut.
No, it does not.
That is a disillusioned 4-year-old. Or maybe that's the other. Maybe we need to take it to the far extreme and just crush all imagination at all. Just say you're not an astronaut and you're a boy, not a girl.
Right,
Just
right.
crush all of it equally. You either equally support it all or you equally crush it all. That's it.
So this kind of takes us into the next thing,
yes.
which is kind of related to identity. Well, not kind of, majorly related. This is a tweet from Colin Wright, and it says, failing to challenge... Well, let's read the screenshot that he posted first. So NBC News had a headline, a tweet. It said, "Jeopardy champion Amy Schneider makes history, becoming the highest-earning female contestant in the game show's nearly 57-year run." And of course, the thing that they're leaving out of their headline is this female is a biological man, is trans. So, Yeah, this is, and so the Colin Wright says, failing to challenge absurd mantras like trans women are women has allowed the mantra to morph into trans women are female, which is patently absurd.
Yes.
And then he says, do you see the game being played? When you fail to call out absurdities, don't be shocked when the absurdities ratchet up another click. And of course, I had to reply to this. And in my tweet, I said, turns out men are better at being women than women. The patriarchy is undefeated.
Yep. And then wasn't there somebody that replied to that too? I thought the reply was really funny.
We played a win. Yeah.
I thought that was a great reply to your reply.
That is a great.
That was hilarious. But it's true, because this is kind of the unspoken thing that everyone's thinking, is that, well, once again, men are better at being women than women. They're just better at everything now.
I mean, you literally see just men become women and then they dominate in whatever field.
Take it up a step. It's like they're not even better at being women. They're better at being female. Like,
yeah, true. Yeah.
It is absurd. And somebody was telling me about this Jeopardy contestant a few days ago, an older woman. And, she was trying to be nice about it and say, she doesn't make a very pretty woman. And she wears those pearls. And I audibly went, ugh. Yeah.
Well, I mean, pearls don't look good on anyone unless you're 90-something.
Right. Or you're a true Southern lady or something. I don't know. But, yeah, I mean, I think the real failing with this ideology, too, is that a lot of people were willing to take the libertarian stance, like, okay, you want to be trans. If you're putting in effort to try to convince the world that you're a woman, even though you're not, we'll play along and we'll be nice and you're not hurting anybody. But then now we're all going, well, you know what? Screw you, because you're trying to shove these things in our throat. We don't want to deal with it anymore. And it's not fair that we treated you with respect because you're a person, not because of whatever you decided to change into or whatever you decided to wear. You're just a person, so we're going to treat you with respect and we'll use your pronouns even if we think it's retarded. And now they're saying, well, that's not enough. Now you have to agree to this new rule. Right. And we're like, we didn't sign up for this.
And that libertarian model doesn't even apply anymore. Well, as long as you're not hurting anyone. Well, we're in the point now where trans women, biological males, are hurting actual women. They're entering like high school sports and breaking all the sports records and crushing the dreams of all the female athletes that have worked for many years to get to where they are. And then to have a biological male switch from the men's league to come and start just crushing them.
Right.
You are doing damage to somebody else. You are harming somebody else unfairly.
Or that Penn State swimmer who beat the next, like, he won the race and the next closest winner was behind by 38 seconds, which in swimming is like like such a long amount of time. It's ridiculous.
Well, I watched it. It was a long amount of time to sit there and watch the video for 38 seconds. I was like, oh, okay, so he won there. Oh, no, there's another lap that needs to be done.
Is he alone? Like, is he swimming by himself?
Yeah.
No, there's other people. But, I mean, the trans agenda in general is hurting people because, like the first two videos we watched, you're hurting young minds. It's not just, you're an adult who's decided to do this thing and we'll respect that. It's becoming, you're preying on the weaker and the lesser minded, like children or special needs people. Like, you see this a lot with, like, people dress up their Down syndrome siblings in drag or whatever. Yeah. And it's like, that is predatory. That's not us just respecting you as an individual. You're hurting other people by trying to promote this lifestyle.
And I think this is what people on the right mean when they say the gay agenda. I think to people on the left, that sounds like a ridiculous statement, like homosexuality doesn't have an agenda. That's just how people are. But it's like, no, that's not what it means. The gay agenda means exactly everything that we're talking about, is pushing these absurdities on people. It's fine if you're homosexual or you're confused about your gender or you want to be trans. I have no problem with adults doing what they want to do with their own life. But when we say agenda, the gay agenda, the LGBTQIAS++ agenda...
Slug butts.
Slug butts, yes. Agenda, we're talking about the seeping of this into every element of culture. I mean, you have U.S. government buildings flying rainbow flags in Kabul during Pride Month or whatever, and it's like, this has gone far beyond tolerance. This has gone to, you have to accept everything that we say under the rainbow flag, and if you don't, you're a bigot. And it's just ridiculous. You're asking me to do something that is just a lie. You're asking me to accept things that are just not true, and I won't do that.
Well, and there was, I know you don't have this pulled up right now, but there was an article in the Daily Mail that just goes to show how damaging this ideology is for young people even.
Yeah, we can bring this up. You want to read this?
So this article, like I said, it was in the Daily Mail on Christmas. The title reads, "Children are being, quote, brainwashed by TikTok videos on, quote, cool trans surgery viewed 26 billion times, campaigners claim." And the subheading is, "Some parents are concerned TikTok is fueling a social contagion of pressure. More than a quarter of all British TikTok users are aged between 15 and 25, and videos with the hashtag trans have been seen more than 26 billion times." And if you don't really understand the algorithm of TikTok, it always will give you videos that are similar to videos you've already watched. And it's also a never-ending stream.
Yeah.
As soon as you swipe up, there's another video. As soon as you swipe up, there's another video. And the algorithm will just pull it from wherever in the app if it fits within the similar vein of what you've already been watching.
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, TikTok is almost like a regime's wet dream of how to brainwash the population, because you have this endless stream of really eye-catching content. It's only 15 seconds per, and you move on to something completely different, maybe in the same sort of realm or ideology, but it's a different person, different setting, different music, whatever. And on top of that, you're shown similar content during the scroll. You're not shown anything contradictory. You're not shown anything from an opposing ideology. So you're just absorbing all of this. And it's like the definition of an echo chamber, but it's an echo chamber that basically forcibly grabs your attention and holds it. So it's like, it's literally like a government that wanted to brainwash its population with its own information could not have come up with a better invention than TikTok.
True.
And TikTok's ostensibly not controlled by the government, but
right. Well, and it is very addictive, and even in the app, if you're on it for a really long time and you just keep swiping and swiping and swiping, eventually you'll swipe up and it'll be a video made by TikTok, like the company, and it'll say, "Hey, maybe it's time to put your phone down and like go do something else because you've been on here too long."
Does it do that in the US version?
Yes. I don't know if it does that in other versions, but I imagine it would. But
well, not to go to like too deep into the geopolitical realm, but you see stories about China restricting social media access for their young population.
Right.
But TikTok is a Chinese app. And so I would think if I'm China, I would understand the dangers of TikTok and want to restrict my population from engaging with it. But I want to let it run rampant in Western countries.
Well, it's a warning video. Like it'll pop up like, "Hey, time to put your phone down," but it doesn't prevent you from still swiping. So
I see.
It's more of
it's
just
like a virtue signal.
Kind of, except that everyone just swipes past it and keeps watching.
All the people working for TikTok can feel good about themselves because they put a warning video there, but they'll keep feeding you an endless stream of content.
Well, and if you criticize them and say that their app is dangerous just in how it functions and its algorithm, they can say, "Well, we put these in there, so we can't, if you're choosing to watch this much, it's not our fault."
Yeah.
Because we put warnings up or whatever.
It's like plausible deniability.
Exactly.
So do you want to read this next part?
Yeah. So in the article, it goes on to say, campaigners have accused TikTok of helping children to be, quote, brainwashed by hosting viral social media videos that promote changing sex as cool. Material posted by transgender influencers on the social networking service, in which they provide advice on transitioning and accessing hormone therapies, has been seen by millions of young viewers. And that is really dangerous, because if you're on the internet, you are going to be able to access literally anything that you want. But with an app that is really, the demographic is so young, promoting hormone therapies, and also in some cases these influencers are telling you how to get them, that's really dangerous, because they're trying to make it seem like it's really an easy thing. And this article even goes into that a little bit, but it's not an easy thing, and it is very damaging. psychologically and physically.
Yeah, talk about grooming.
And it's one thing to be like, this is what I did, this is my story. It's another thing to say, here's how you can do exactly what I did.
To an audience that you know is most likely underage. And we
Right.
know how like teenagers get, there's phases for a reason, right? You got the goth kids, you got the jockey kids, right?
Right.
The kids and young kids get fixated. I know I was fixated on video games, particularly like playing League of Legends all the time, basically. And it's just like you're dealing with kids who get fixated on something, so they could get trapped in that TikTok ecosystem, and then they're fed a never-ending stream of like, you should do this, go on, do it. Like it's an
Right.
endless encouragement, and then they're giving them resources too
Right.
to actually engage in that, in what could ultimately be a form of self-harm, I think.
Right. Well, and I think the other thing too, if the teenagers do fixate on things, but they tend to fixate on things that they enjoy, but that they also find a community in. So like I was really into music and playing my flute forever and ever and ever, but I also had marching band, and all my friends were in marching band. And so of course, even if I was like, ugh, I don't want to go to band, it was like, oh, I get to see all my friends if I go, and doing this and continuing to do this allows me to be a part of something else. And I imagine it's the same thing with video games, because you get online and your other friends are online and you're like, I'm playing with my friends just in a virtual space. And so with these TikTok influencers, these kids are going, well, if I transition like this person did, I'll have this community and I can be a part of this. And young kids just want to have that support system. And it doesn't really matter where it comes from if it semi aligns with their interests.
Yeah.
So that's really dangerous too. Yes, and this article says analysis by the Mail on Sunday shows that videos with the hashtag trans have been seen more than 26 billion times. And that goes back to the algorithm too. Anything with the same hashtag is going to filter into your feed.
Yeah.
Last night, Kate Harris of the LGB Alliance.
Wait, they're missing some letters.
No, this is a different thing.
Oh, this is a different thing?
This is in opposition to LGBT stuff.
Oh, this is
completely different.
This is
almost like an
it's an anti-rainbow group.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Because they oppose Stonewall's policies, which Stonewall is like a big gay organization, basically. So let me start over. Last night, Kate Harris of the LGB Alliance, which opposes Stonewall's policies on transgender issues, said, quote, "Our major concern is that millions of impressionable children are watching these online influencers. It's no coincidence that the growth of TikTok coincides exactly with the exponential growth of children presenting with gender dysphoria." And I will add just anecdotally too that it's not just gender dysphoria. It's people thinking they have Tourette's syndrome. It's people thinking they have dissociative identity disorder. It's people thinking they have OCD or that they're a clean freak or whatever. Yeah. So it's not just gender dysphoria. It's a lot of different mental illnesses. But I think gender dysphoria is the largest of the mental illnesses on the rise.
Yeah.
It goes on to say, Miss Harris described some of the videos as, quote, deeply frightening, adding, "The message is so often, don't involve your parents."
Wow.
What these videos would lead a generation of children to believe is that it is easy to change sex and that it is the answer to all of your problems.
Yeah, so I kind of want to riff on this for a little bit because so we know that the rate of suicidality is higher in the transgender demographic group, right? And the traditional argument from the left wing has been that it's simply because transgender people are not accepted in society and to the degree that they should be. And that's creating a lot of pressure, which is causing them to feel unwelcome and not part of the larger community or the country or whatever. And I just don't think that's true. And the reason I don't think that's true is because, number one, right now, it sort of pays to be trans. You automatically get attention. If you're trans, you automatically get special treatment. If you're trans and you're going to work at a big tech company, you're most definitely going to be a top candidate, assuming you have the right skills. You will beat out anyone that's not trans, given equal skill sets, right? But being trans, there's a reluctance to say it's a mental disorder. It is a mental disorder. I can't think of a disorder more disorderly, I guess you could say, than believing that you are a different sex or feeling out of place in your own body. That is that's a disorder on like a different degree of disorders. That's like fundamental. That's something that's not aligning at your core, the core of your being, right? And so this argument that, well, they commit suicide or they have increased rates of suicidality because they're not accepted. How about they have increased rates of suicidality because they're not getting the appropriate mental treatment, right? It's like when you have somebody with clinical depression, right? We don't tell them that they're okay that the way that they are, and we don't enable their depression. We try as hard as we can to eliminate or alleviate their sense of depression because that leads to dark places and suicidality. So my concern with the trans issue specifically is that what we're doing is we are opting to forego perhaps a more optimal treatment for their disorder, and instead we are enabling it and affirming it, which to me doesn't make sense how that would get rid of that fundamental misalignment at their core or that fundamental disjointedness or disorder. So my concern is we're basically just treating the symptom and not the cause. Right. So anyway.
Well, and yeah, you equated it with how, or you compared it to rather how we treat people with depression, but I think this is more similar to people with eating disorders.
Oh, yeah.
Because that has to do with your body image and how you feel in your body. And we don't look at somebody who has anorexia or bulimia and go, well, what you're doing is fine. You think you're too fat, so go ahead and keep making yourself throw up, or go ahead and just keep not eating. That's totally okay. You'll wither away and die, but it's totally fine. You want to feel better about yourself? This makes you feel better about yourself? We'll just let you do it. That is a problem. Nobody would ever say that. Nobody would ever do that. But like you said, this is exactly what we're doing with people with gender dysphoria. And I think just to make it worse is that it's usually younger people. It's either prepubescent or pubescent adolescents. And please point out to me one adolescent that has ever felt comfortable in their bodies or comfortable in their own skin or felt totally confident, never had an awkward moment, never said a weird thing, never had a voice crack. Like, it's embarrassing. It's a weird thing to get older and grow. And it's always painful because you get growing pains and it's just uncomfortable.
And all your clothes don't fit a year after you get them.
Yeah, it's weird. And so now you're adding this extra layer of, well, you might not be the right gender. It's like, Jesus Christ, how confusing do we want to make life for these teenagers? When really all they need is an adult who is of sound mind to look at them and go, you have a good head on your shoulders. You're doing everything right. Being a kid is awkward. You're kind, you're smart, you're beautiful or handsome, whatever. You'll come into your own. You're fine. Instead, we're having mentally ill adults go, you know what you need to do? Irreversible surgery, irreversible therapies. And it's so confusing. These young people just need somebody who is a strong adult to tell them it'll pass. You're going to figure yourself out and you'll be comfortable and confident in yourself. And they need that constant reassurance. But most of these kids are not getting that.
Right. They're being groomed instead. Their insecurities and their weaknesses are being taken advantage of for people with an agenda, which you could call the gay agenda.
It's either an agenda or it's adults who are mentally ill and trying to justify their mental illness through children and adolescents.
Yeah, that's a good point, because when you make a decision, there's sort of this tendency to try to get other people to not just agree with your decision, but to join you, right? Like you want other people to share either because you're insecure about your decision or because you genuinely think you made the right decision.
Right.
And there's just that human tendency. And so,
it's part of that gender affirmation that they're looking for. And it's not even gender affirmation, because if it was just gender affirmation, they'd be totally happy and content and even ecstatic if somebody used the pronouns they asked them to use. But they take it farther and they go, that's not enough. You have to also want people to be trans, and you have to let
us on the sports teams of the sex we identify as, and in the bathrooms we identify as. And you have
to let Medicaid pay for our surgeries and our therapies and all this stuff. And it's like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to pay my taxes to you to be mentally ill.
Right.
I'm not going to do that.
I think the most ridiculous manifestation of this is you hear stories about men who identify as women for the purpose of transferring to female prisons.
It's so
It's
gross.
like,
It's so gross.
If you ever had a place to draw a line with this gender ideology, it should be in prison.
Right.
Those should be the people that I don't want to say don't care about, but when they say, oh, I'm a different gender, the state should ignore them. Like, you're in prison, deal with it. When your sentence is up, you can go live your life as you see fit.
Well, and prison is already pretty cushy if you're not in like a really high security facility. Like, they get iPads, they get laptops, they have TVs, they get 3 meals a day. It's like, you don't also get to have hormone therapy. Sorry.
Taxpayer funded hormone therapy.
Yeah. You can just watch YouTube videos of other trans people and feel good about that. How about that?
How about that?
How about that?
Did you want to read more of this?
Yes. So just to finish this article out, Miss Harris is quoted as saying, oh no, I read that part already. Stephanie, I don't know how to say this, Array Davies, I'm guessing, from Transgender Trend, which wants more evidence-based healthcare for children with gender dysphoria, which I agree with, said, quote, it's hugely influential and it's full of videos that portray medical transition as cool and edgy. Gender is seen as the new rebellion. And then she goes on to say these social media platforms that promote medical transition should be made to include a warning on such material.
Okay, so this is sort of where another concern of mine comes in, and that is putting warnings on social media content.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen how that has been misused and abused by the social media companies in the quote-unquote scientific sphere regarding COVID, election claims and things of that nature. And so I would definitely draw a line at forcing or asking social media companies to label this content, because of course, once you give them permission to do that, they're going to start labeling any sort of social phenomenon however they want to steer the narrative. So I would definitely push back against that. I understand what they're saying, but yeah, that's a sensitive area, and it sort of touches on broader, like, we know that this stuff can be damaging to young children. We know that this is creepy and manipulative and sort of groomy.
Yeah.
But how do you regulate that without also either giving the government the tools to regulate unrelated phenomenon and information, or giving social media the tools to regulate unrelated stuff? So it's like when you're asking about regulation and restrictions and rules regarding the free flow of information, it's a really delicate thing that, I'm not convinced that the immediate answer is we need to regulate it more,
Right. Well, yeah, I agree with that, but I am in support of more evidence-based approaches for children, though, if they're presenting with gender dysphoria, whether it's a fundamental gender dysphoria or whether it's an influenced gender dysphoria. I think so many physicians are just quick to diagnose it and prescribe hormone treatments instead of actually doing any research or maybe looking into a psychiatrist. Like, how many of these kids are going to a psychiatrist? How many of them are just going to a physician? Same thing with ADHD medications. Like, how many of those kids are actually being diagnosed by a psychiatrist?
Well, you have to be careful with that too, because people that are coming out of the universities now, they may be a psychiatrist, but if they've bought into that gender ideology, you may get a psychiatrist that just pushes you closer to the edge instead of does something evidence-based like you're suggesting or like the article suggested. And they may just be another layer of enablement.
Well, you hope that people in their fields follow proper protocol, but you're seeing more and more that doesn't happen.
No.
So, yeah, in an ideal world, that's how it would go. But I guess in practicality, scratch that. Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit more to this, but it's mostly just illustrating some examples of these transgender influencers. And the one that was really shocking to me was just that one of them had what's called top surgery, which is a double mastectomy that is voluntary, which is horrible body mutilation. And she said, help heal with me. But she had other videos that said, I used to be a good Christian kid before she transitioned to what she said was a trans gay atheist who loves tattoos and chaos. So putting those two phrases together, trying to illustrate like the gay chaos is better than, she used the word good Christian. You literally are saying that it was better when you were a Christian and now you're this, but you're trying to make it seem like this way is better. And this is just a blatant manifestation of your dysphoria, because even the words you're using, and I know people just say good Christian kid as like
a stereotypical,
like a way to stereotype how you were raised. But it's like, if you really didn't like how you were raised, you probably would have just said I was raised as a Christian, or I was raised in a strict Christian household or something. You wouldn't say I was a good Christian kid, because if that were true, what happened?
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, the one thing I want to say about this last statement too is I think also increasingly what we're seeing is people who are part of the Rainbow Coalition are simply just inventing ways to make their identity some part of the rainbow flag. Like, I mean, and what I mean by identity is like their personality. Like, you don't need a word for yourself as a gender, one of these 72 pronouns, if you are a more masculine woman or a more feminine dude, but you like metal, but you also like baking. Like, people have all kinds of manners of different interests. They have different idiosyncrasies. And it seems increasingly to me like people have their own idiosyncrasies. They're embedded in this rainbow group, and they say, oh, my idiosyncrasies are different than everyone else's. I must be a unique gender. And it's like, no. So like this right here, trans gay atheist who loves tattoos and chaos. Okay. The trans part, gender dysphoria. But gay atheist who loves tattoos and chaos, that's just your personality manifesting in the world. That's literally what it is. Yeah, you could say homosexuality. Like, that's pretty much accepted now. I mean, no one says anything about homosexuality.
I just don't think that sexuality is an identity.
No,
like,
it's not. Yeah.
I think it is more similar to a personality trait than an identity. I mean, it's not. It's just how you are in the world. It's how you are in society. It has nothing to do with your idiosyncrasies, like you said. It has nothing to do with your personality. It's just
It's just how you're wired.
It's how you're wired. It's just what you do. What you do is not who you are. How many times have we heard that? But that is what it's becoming. It's like, you're gay. Congrats. What do you want? A trophy?
You are not interesting because you like to put your junk in weird places. That's just not, it's not interesting in the slightest. And it doesn't make you worthy of special recognition, that's for sure.
There was, I watched a show a while ago, but there was like an older gay character in it, and there was a younger gay character, and the younger gay character was being mean, like quipping at the older one, and the older one goes, being gay and mean is not a personality. And I was like, yeah, that's it.
Perfect.
But yeah, I mean, we can move on from all this trans stuff, but it makes me incredibly sad, and it makes me really disheartened. And
can we, though? Will society let us move on from this trans stuff?
Well, we can move on from the trans stuff.
Yes.
As a whole society, probably not. I think we're headed into deep, dark days, but...
Well, let's talk about a topic that really hasn't been talked about enough, and that's COVID.
I knew you were going there, but it's still funny.
Yeah, so I have a whole bunch of COVID things to start with. So maybe we'll start with Dr. Leanna Wen and what she had to say on CNN.
This bitch.
So let's get this.
I hate her smiley
Cloth
face.
masks are not appropriate for this pandemic. It's not appropriate for Omicron. It was not appropriate for Delta, Alpha, or any of the previous variants either, because we're dealing with something that's airborne.
So just to be clear, and just so that the powers that be know that I'm quoting Dr. Leanna Wen, she says cloth masks are not and have never been effective against any variant of COVID. That's not my words. That's not the words of Alex Jones. That's not the words of your crackpot uncle. That is the words of Dr. Leanna Wen.
I'm twitching.
I could see that.
I should have tried to find a video of her saying that cloth masks do work.
Well, yes.
Because I know it's out there somewhere.
If cloth masks didn't work, why did you recommend, and the public health establishment recommend, wearing 2 masks?
Isn't there a video somewhere of her or someone like her saying, it doesn't matter what mask it is, just wear a mask.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a surgical mask. It doesn't have to be an N95 or KN95. Just any mask is okay as long as there's a mask. And now she's saying cloth masks are not appropriate. Maybe if it was never appropriate, you should have specified, go find a surgical mask or a KN95 mask.
Right.
Don't say that any mask is better than no mask. If cloth masks don't work, then not any mask is better than no mask.
Right, exactly.
It doesn't make any sense.
This, honestly, I'm kind of baffled because this should have been apparent to anyone with an ounce of common sense. There's no way that a thin piece of woven cotton is going to do anything to prevent against any sort of disease. I'm sorry.
My favorite thing was seeing the people of Walmart pictures of men wearing women's underwear.
Yeah.
Faces. Or people would put handkerchiefs around their face, and it's there's all this air under it. I don't know.
Yeah, and so that's one thing that the conspiracy theorists got right, of course.
But everyone was told that they were wrong.
Here's another thing that the conspiracy theorists got right. So let's see if we can get this.
Look, there is no federal solution. This gets solved at a state level.
So this is Biden saying of COVID that there is no federal solution. Essentially, he's saying that COVID has to be dealt with at the state level, which again is what the anti-maskers, anti-vaxxers, conspiracy theorists, COVID deniers have been saying since the very beginning.
Except when Ron DeSantis tries to handle it on the state level, they come for him.
Yes. So they come for him when he's dealing with his own thing, when he's taking his own step.
I can't deal with this.
So what they're doing is they're doing a total reversal, and this is going to be another aspect of government gaslighting that I think is going to rival the gaslighting that we've seen during the entirety of COVID, because they're going to rewrite history. They're going to pull an Orwellian. They're going to rewrite history and say, no, we never said those things. We never said wear 2 masks. We never said cloth masks were effective. We never said we could control this from the federal level. We never said any of that.
Didn't the Atlanta already do that? Is that what
The
it's
Atlantic?
called? The Atlantic? That's it.
I don't know.
I almost said the Atlantis.
I don't have that article with me right now.
No, I mean, this was a year ago, though. They had changed a headline or something. You can look it up. That is something that happened.
Yeah, well,
but it's just going to continue to happen.
I have noticed a general trend of the New York Times, the Atlantic, the Washington Post, all these places generally writing articles that if they had published them or if somebody else had published them a year or a year and a half ago, they would have been banned from Twitter, blocked for misinformation, all kinds of stuff. They would have had that little warning label slapped on their YouTube video saying, get the latest from the CDC. But since they're part of the establishment and they're playing the game, they're part of the regime, then they can write whatever they want to be critical. And of course, actually, let me make a prediction here.
Okay.
I think it's only a matter of time before these publications start taking down the articles that they wrote hyping up COVID. I think that it's only a matter of time. So that way, people like us, when we go, see what you were saying 2 years ago, we won't be able to find anything. I mean, you already can't with Google. Good luck finding any article on Google.
Do you think they're going to do that because their ratings are continuing to drop? Or do you think they're going to do that for the reason that you said, that so nobody can go back and reference and starkly contrast what was said then and what's being said now?
So the cynical part of me is saying that this is a concerted effort to make the sort of right-wingers look crazy all the time. But I guess if you're looking from a more human motivation perspective, no one wants to be so wrong about something that is so important. And it's fine to be wrong, especially when we're dealing with an unknown disease that came out of China. No one knew how it was going to be or what we could do about it at the very beginning. I understand being wrong when you don't have enough information, but when the right-wingers and conspiracy theorists only needed a couple months at most to come up with the conclusions that all of these people we just read, Biden and Leana Wen, among others, and the public health establishment continued going down the wrong path, it can only be explained by a desire for power control, but probably mostly just because these people at the top don't want to be wrong. You can't be Dr. Fauci at the head of the NIAID or Francis Collins at the head of the NIH and be so wrong about a public health matter when that's supposed to be your area of expertise. I just think hubris, pride, narcissism won't allow them to let go of the fact that they were wrong. And instead, they just keep doubling down and doubling down and doubling down. And now they have an opportunity for an off-ramp. So they've sent all of their little underlings to say, our policies got us through this. We're fine. Now we can start erasing history and forgetting about this whole ordeal.
Well, I think part of it, too, is that none of these talking heads have any sense of what integrity is. So they don't want to be wrong for all of the reasons that you said, the hubris, the ego, the narcissism. But it's also, if any one of them, even Dr. Fauci, who has survived, 7 presidencies or something like that?
Yeah.
I mean, he's in his 80s.
Yeah,
but
he just turned 81.
Oh.
Happy birthday, Dr. Fauci.
Thanks, Fauci. COVID didn't get you. But if he had even from the beginning said, this is new, we don't know anything about it, we've had done some research on it, but it's very minimal. We're going to work through it. We're going to update as we go. That would have shown the American people that he's transparent and he has integrity. And if he says things that seem to contradict, each other, from one month to the next, he's already put out that disclaimer that I might be wrong, so I might have to update what I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Instead, he just goes, I got it. And so then every time he's wrong, he goes, no, I still got it.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. And it's like, nobody trusts you. If you had just said, we're going to change what we're saying as we learn more, nobody would have been angry.
Right.
We're angry because you're openly lying to us and trying to convince us that you know something you don't know.
Right. And all of that annoys me greatly, but the part that perhaps annoys me even more is I'm not likely to listen to anyone unless they can make their argument to me and I agree that their argument sounds reasonable. I am not the kind of person that's just going to be told that something is true or that some policy makes sense without justification. You have to justify it to me. And we have had a distinct lack of the public health authorities going on TV. They are fine to go on TV and say, we have to do this, we have to do this, we have to do that. But very rarely, or if ever, have I seen them outline why their recommendations make sense from a scientific perspective, from a disease prevention perspective. They came out with the 6 feet of social distancing. They can't rationalize that. They can't argue for that reasonably because that number was made up.
Yep.
And we know that now. A recent article came out basically saying that number came out of nowhere. The original recommendation was 10 feet.
Yeah.
And for political reasons, they reduced it.
But they're like, 10 feet might be too much, so we'll reduce it to 6. And it's like...
But when you have an instance like that, where you cannot scientifically justify a public health policy, except for saying, we said so, so do it, it calls into question everything else you've said. Especially when you also don't give justifications to any of the other policies they're recommending. They never once produced a study on CNN or produced a rational argument for why cloth masks would work.
Yep.
They just said, do it. It probably works.
And so, like you, I don't like being told what to do, but it's not even that I need any kind of argument or rationale. It's like, if you tell me to do something, I go, I don't want to.
Yeah.
Because you told me to do it. If you ask it as a favor, I'm like, okay. But if you tell me I have to and you mandate things, I go, I don't want to. And I've always been like that. I literally lost my internship that would have given me my degree because I didn't want to be told what to do.
Yeah.
If I wanted to go along with it just to get my degree done and finish my internship and be able to have the career that I want to have, I would have went along with it. But nobody said, it's an option. They said, you have to. And I said, fuck off.
Yeah. Do you want to tell the listeners and viewers what exactly you rejected?
Yes. Well, I don't know. It might get us in trouble. But so I was I had moved to Baltimore for a music therapy internship. That I'm not going to name names of, but part of the music therapy degree is you do a 6 to 9 month internship. It's a 1,200-hour internship. It's usually unpaid. This one was paid, which I thought I was very fortunate to have. Baltimore is a very blue city. Yes. If you don't know.
Well, and that internship, you only secure that internship after a while of looking. Like this was something that you had been waiting for.
My class was the unfortunate class of 2020 that kind of got kicked out in March of 2020. So everyone got sent home. And it took me about a year to even find an internship because a lot of the internships that were available had other interns that were still in the program that they were trying to figure out what to do through COVID because the internships are not responsible for the students. The universities are still, because of the way that the degree is set up. You don't get your degree and then do an internship. You have to do the internship to get the degree. So technically you're still in the charge of the university. It's very confusing, and everyone I tell is like, that's stupid and doesn't make any sense. And I agree, but it's just the way that American Music Therapy Association has set up their requirements. So it took me a while to get one because of all of the other students that were trying to get through their internships through the start of COVID. And I finally got one, struggled to find an apartment, got there, moved there, was there for a very short amount of time. I had to wear a mask all the time, which I was like, whatever, you're dealing with other people, a lot of other people all the time. I'll play ball. I'll wear the mask. And then the company is a big national company, and they had a national requirement for their employees to get the vaccine, one of the COVID vaccines, one of them. And they basically said that interns are employees, even though I'm technically under the charge of my school still, and that if I was going to keep participating, I would have to get vaccinated. And I said, well, I really don't want to. I have spiritual opposition to it. I have potential medical opposition to it that I don't really want to risk. I'm of childbearing years. I really don't want to take a gamble on that because we really don't have any idea what this does to people yet. And I didn't want to risk that for my future children.
And plus, you're in the demographic group that is least likely to die besides children.
Least likely to get it and die or be hospitalized or any of that. Yeah. I mean, if I got it, it would be so mild that, well, I think I did have it eventually, like recently, but I'm still here, not dead, not hospitalized. So I basically told them that I didn't want to do that, and I had to have a meeting with like this national board director, and she basically told me that I could go through their legal team and they would be able to tell me if my oppositions and my exemptions to it were valid exemptions. And I said, so basically you're telling me that I need a legal team to tell me if my personhood is a valid personhood in this company. And she was like, yes.
That's so...
And it sucked so bad. It sucked so bad. So that was 6 years of my life and lots of money that has not come to fruition. But we keep chugging along. There are other things out there for me, and I know that. But all of my professors were like, off the record, good for you. And I'm like, can we put it on the record, though? Will you actually stand up for me and
this is what I
back
can't
me?
Stand about all this is somebody will be vaccinated, right? Mm-hmm. And then they will say, well, I don't like the vaccine mandates, but they've already got vaccinated, so they don't have an incentive to fight against it, except for principle. Right. And most people aren't principled enough to speak up at their place of employment, even if they're vaccinated, or when they're vaccinated, to say, hey, I don't agree with this. And it's just, it's really disturbing. It's really depressing. And you have people out there. I was talking to somebody recently who was like, yeah, I don't really have a problem with people being able to get out of the vaccine mandates, but I think that you should just have to justify your philosophy and send a letter to the government or something. I'm like, that's not how rights work.
Right.
You get to exercise your rights without excuse. You do not have to tell the government why you're engaging in your rights. You don't have to tell the government, at least in sensible states, why you own a gun. You don't have to tell the government why you're protesting or what the content of your protest is going to be. There are time, manner, and place restrictions. I mean, every right has some restrictions, but you do not have to justify to the government why you want to exercise a right. And so to have this idea floating around that, oh yeah, I support exemptions, you should just have to justify it. No. I shouldn't have to justify my refusal to have a medical treatment, no matter how benign, no matter how safe. I should not have to provide a justification other than no when I'm being coerced to do that.
Right. Well, and that was really the breaking point for me at this opportunity that I had, because it's exactly that. I didn't want to. Yes, I could have filed an exemption within the company, but I didn't think that that was right. I didn't think that I had to justify my personal choice to a large corporation. Doesn't make any sense.
Right.
I'm like, I'm here to do a job. You're either going to let me do the job or you're not.
Right.
I don't have to file for an exemption to be considered an okay human to you. That's not happening.
Right.
And it was so frustrating because it's like, I haven't done anything against any of your rules, but you want me to play this game. And a lot of people told me like, well, you've worked so hard for this. Why don't you just file the exemption? Why don't you just go along with it? Like, okay, yeah, you don't want to get the vaccine. That's fine. But why don't you try to file for an exemption and do all this stuff? And it's like, if I do not stand my ground on this, there is nothing else in this world that I will.
Yeah.
If I am weak on this, what else will I succumb to?
Right.
If I am not willing to say, I am throwing away my entire potential career on principle, you better know that I mean business.
Right.
And I wanted to be an example for other young people too, because I am 23. There are plenty of things I can do with my life. I didn't have to be stuck in one thing and do something that I didn't want to do.
Right. Well, here's the thing, too, about that is if you do go through the exemption process, you are making an implicit statement that their game is valid.
Exactly.
That their power is valid. And it's
didn't
like
do that.
the only appropriate response to an expression of illegitimate power is to ignore it.
Yeah.
This is why civil disobedience is so potent.
Mm-hmm.
You literally just ignore the power that the government or whoever is trying to exert over you.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot recognize it as legitimate. And this idea that, well, maybe you could find a loophole within their system, that might be true, but you are saying implicitly that, well, their system is valid, I'm just going to try to play within those rules.
Which is why I didn't want to do it. I'm like,
Right.
By not playing ball, I am saying I reject your rules, I reject your premise, and this is not okay. This
Right.
is not, and I'm one person out of thousands of people that work for the company, but I'm sure there were others that did the same thing, but I'm like, I'm not going to play the game.
Yeah.
And, I called our dad to tell him that I was moving home and that I had to give this up, and he was really upset about it. And I said, I am not playing this game. And he was like, okay, I
Yeah.
get it. I mean, it was really upsetting, and it was really hard for me to
hard.
make that decision. But this is exactly how this is the exact pressure that they want to put on people. They want you to feel like you have no other options. You have no way out. They want you to feel like everything you've worked for is on the line, and they are banking on you breaking because you don't want to lose what you've worked for.
Right.
And I was not going to give anyone that satisfaction.
Yeah. So
I don't like this game.
So for anyone listening, I think I have my own sort of vaccine trial that it's going to be coming up soon, which I will get into after I say this one thing, which is for anyone out there that is not vaccinated and is worried about their career in the future, or in the future or in the far future or whatever, their career being threatened or their ability to access public services being threatened or whatever. You have to think about it. You can't just put off the decision for when the moment comes, because you're going to make the wrong decision in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
You have to play it in your head first.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine all the scenarios, the potential coercive factors that are going to be used against you to get your compliance.
Mm-hmm.
Play through all those scenarios in your head ahead of time and make your decision ahead of time. So when the moment comes, you can make the appropriate decision. I've already done this. When these vaccine mandates started coming out, I was like, well, I'm a remote worker, so it's not likely that I'll be affected by a vaccine mandate. But hypothetically, if my CEO were to get on a call and say, hey, you have to get vaccinated or we have to let you go, I was prepared to make the decision, I'm not working here anymore.
Right.
Like, I'll go do my own thing. It's fine. I don't need this. So, but it's hard to do that on the spot.
Absolutely.
If you're put on the spot. So I want to get into... even though COVID appears to be winding down, the Omicron's not super threatening to people. You have these various public health officials walking back or directly contradicting things that they've been saying for years now. There is still this idea sort of percolating around that we're going to be doing domestic travel vaccine mandates for airlines. So here's Dr. Fauci.
Let me ask you about something else from the president's interview with David. David asked about the lack of a vaccine requirement for air travel. There is no vaccine requirement for domestic air travel in the United States. And when the president was asked, should there be one, he said that his team has said it's not necessary at this point. Do you agree with that? That there shouldn't be a vaccine requirement for domestic air travel?
Well, it depends on what you want to use it for. I mean, vaccine requirements for people coming in from other countries is to prevent newly infected people from getting into the country. A vaccine requirement for a person getting on the plane is just another level of getting people to have a mechanism that would spur them to get vaccinated. Namely, you can't get on a plane unless you're vaccinated, which is just another one of the ways of getting requirements, whatever that might be. So, I mean, anything that could get people more vaccinated would be welcome.
So there you heard straight from the horse's mouth. This is not about public health. This is about another lever of power, another way to utilize coercion to get the outcome that we want. And so this ties into what I just mentioned about my own vaccine trial and tribulation. I'm supposed to go to a company trip in the upcoming months, and we have this chatter now about vaccine mandates to fly. And the place that I'm going to, the city that I'm going to, has a vaccine mandate to do indoor restaurants, bars, entertainment, and all that stuff. And so I basically, I'm obviously not going to get vaccinated. Right. So I had to talk to my CEO and say, hey, look, this may be a problem. There's no vaccine mandates for domestic travel yet, but if it comes, I'm not going to fly. Right. There's no universe in which I'm going to fly.
And you don't like driving, so you probably won't drive either.
If it's close enough, I might drive. But and then I also told him, look, the place that we've selected for our offsite, it has a vaccine mandate. Now, ironically enough, or coincidentally enough, rather, the offsite that they picked, they tried to avoid places with vax mandates to accommodate me, which I appreciate. Yeah. But on the day they selected our offsite was when the city, which is D.C., announced their vax mandate.
They put them all back.
So I basically, he was like, oh, we finally found something that works for everyone. And I was like, so obviously that's an awkward position, but...
Yeah. I mean, I appreciate that they're trying to accommodate you and they're not making a big fuss about it. They aren't trying to demonize you for this. Right. I mean, maybe behind closed doors they are, but not on face value. They're not saying, why don't you just do this thing? But at the same time, it's like, this is going to become more and more difficult.
Yeah. And this is, so we'll see how it works. I mean, if I can drive, I will drive. But, I may have to get rejected from eating in a restaurant in front of my whole team. And, in some ways, I'm kind of hoping that happens, not so I can make a scene or anything, but just because, I think that I'm viewed as a valuable member of the team and of the company, and I want them to see how unreasonable it is. Right. That somebody who, I would describe myself as generally reasonable and intelligent and certainly valuable to that team, to see how unreasonable it is for a city to turn me away from a restaurant because I don't want to undergo a medical treatment. Right. I hope that even if I just do that little bit, that's going to change some minds or change some hearts, and some people are going to get to see, maybe this isn't a good idea after all. But
right, because if you just see videos of this happening and you don't know the people, you don't live in the city that it's happening, you kind of can dissociate yourself from it. And you go, well, they didn't follow the rules, so they got what was coming to them. But if it's somebody that you know and it's somebody that you value or even consider a friend that it's happening to, you're probably going to come to their aid, hopefully, and be on the defensive. And you're right. It would definitely change their minds because, it's like, this is somebody that we know and we trust. Why are you treating them this way? Right. And it's really off-putting when it's somebody that you know, especially if police get involved. You go, whoa. Why is this happening?
I hope it doesn't get to that point.
I don't think you would cause a scene like that. You probably would just go, okay, well, I guess I'm going back to the hotel or whatever. See you guys later. But
if a restaurant owner wants to check my vaccine status, they're going to have to tell me explicitly to leave. But once they do, I will leave. I'm not going to
wait for the police to come.
Yeah, I'm not going to be like, I'm staying, call the police. I'm just going to, if they ask me, if I can get away with it, if I can just walk in and sit down and they don't do anything, that's an act of civil disobedience on the restaurant owner's part.
Correct.
But if they do ask me to show papers, I'm going to say, I don't have them. I'm from out of state. I'm from a place that doesn't have a vaccine mandate.
Right.
And they turn me away, then that'll be the end of that. I'll go outside. funnily enough, one of my friends that works there has a severe allergy to like everything, so he can't eat anywhere anyway.
So you two could just hang out.
We'll probably just hang out outside.
Pack some Sammies or
But
something.
yeah, on this domestic vaccine requirement for air travel, here's a tweet from The Hill. Biden says if medical team advises it, he'll issue domestic travel vaccine requirement. So to me, they've already made their decision. They want to do this. They very clearly want to do this. These are just little testing the waters, little litmus tests. They put Dr. Fauci on TV to talk about how it's a good idea. It's another way to coerce people. And Biden's saying, well, if the scientists recommend it, I really have no choice but to do it. You know, I think
our sock puppet president.
Yeah, I think they're so ready to go with this requirement, and they're just trying to figure out how they make it acceptable to the public.
Well, they're putting their feelers out, right? Because whatever reactions they get to that Fauci clip or whatever reactions they get to this tweet and this story, that's going to really inform their decision, right? If it's a mostly positive response or mostly in favor of these restrictions and these mandates, then they're going to do it, whether the medical advisors say to or not. But if it's mostly negative, they probably will wait a couple more months before they do it.
But they're in some sense they're running out of time, right? If Omicron pans out to be a big nothing burger, what justification will there be? What justification will there be for them to institute this vaccine requirement? If everyone in the United States has been infected by Omicron or Delta and or vaccinated, what? There is no rationale for doing a vaccine requirement other than lining Pfizer's pockets.
Well, and here's a little bit of a white pill for you. So I was talking with my coworker yesterday, and she's triple vaxxed. Her husband's double vaxxed. Her daughter, who is entirely too young, in my opinion, to be vaxxed, is vaxxed. And her and her daughter both got COVID. And her husband is like, his coworker has COVID now. And so she's like, oh, great, he's going to get sick now, whatever. But we were talking about the Omicron variant and also every other sickness that's going around right now. And I was like, it's really just ripping through people right now. Like, it's going like crazy. I'm like, I say we just get everyone together. Like when kids used to get the chicken pox, just have some COVID parties, get your natural immunity, get sick, get it over with, let it go through the population and be done with it. And she goes, yes, that's what we need to do. I'm really sick of this. And I was like, hey, a boosted person said this because she still got COVID after 3 booster shots, or not 3 booster shots. Oh my God. No, 3 shots.
Yeah, that's actually interesting that you said that because I have another story here. So you recall the Great Barrington Declaration? It's a declaration signed by thousands upon thousands of scientists.
I didn't know the name.
This is the, what is the website? I don't know what the website is, but you can Google search Great Barrington Declaration, and this is it here.
Maybe.
And it basically, maybe. Maybe DuckDuckGo that one. This one basically says, like, to manage this pandemic, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'll paraphrase. So it says, to manage this pandemic, we need to only lock down the most vulnerable, essentially. The lockdowns have massive societal costs that severely outweigh any detriment that COVID infections throughout the community would have. So the Great Barrington Declaration basically says, protect the most vulnerable, institute sensible policies to keep the nursing homes safe and the hospitals safe and all that stuff, but basically achieve herd immunity in the meantime, because this declaration was published before the vaccines were even out, like even close to out.
Right.
This is when people like Fauci were telling Donald Trump that he was ridiculous for saying that the vaccines would be out in a year, which they were. And
now they're spouting,
right? But this Great Barrington Declaration basically said we cannot stay locked down until the vaccines are available. That will cause irreparable harm, which it has. You see the large wealth transfer to people like Bezos and the top billionaires, the destruction of restaurants that have sometimes been in business for 30, 50, 60 years, right? You have kids who can't remember a birthday party because they're too young. Their last birthday party may have been at 3 years old, and they're 6 now, and they,
Which is just weird.
So you have all this, and of course the deaths of despair, the increased drug overdose deaths, all this damage that the lockdowns did, and everyone can see the damage they were being done, and no one said anything. Well, why do you think that is? If you had a guess, why did the lockdowns continue? Why did no one listen to this Great Barrington Declaration? I'm sure you could guess.
They weren't part of the plan. They were coming in to the scene as an opposition to the plan. And even though it makes sense, they said, well, that's not what we agreed to do.
Yes.
So that's not what we're going to do.
And do you have any inkling of who was involved in actively suppressing this Great Barrington Declaration?
Is it an entity or is it a person?
Persons and peoples.
Ooh. Oh, probably the Pfizer CEO or the Moderna CEO.
I'm sure they were involved, but
No, somebody
we have
less specific than that.
we have the smoking gun here. This is
Is it Fauci?
this is an email from FOIA request, actually a Freedom of Information
Yeah.
Act request. This is an email from the director of the NIH, Dr. Francis Collins, and it's to Dr. Fauci from the NIAID. And this was sent on October 8th of 2020. And this email says, "Hi, Tony and Cliff." I guess these are people that are CC'd on it. Oh, Anthony Fauci. Yeah,
It's
Tony Fauci.
Who's Cliff?
I don't know who Cliff is. Cliff Lane from also the NIH. So some colleague.
I see.
All right. So this email says, "Hi, Tony and Cliff. See gbdeclaration.org." That's the Great Barrington Declaration page. This proposal from 3 fringe epidemiologists who met with the secretary seems to be getting a lot of attention, and even a co-signature from Nobel Prize winner Mike Leavitt at Stanford. There needs to be a quick and devastating published takedown of its premises. I don't see anything like that online yet. Is it underway?
Ooh, that was chilling.
So these are the heads.
chilling.
These are the people setting public health policy who are actively saying, we need to take down this declaration. We need to discredit it. I'm paraphrasing now.
Yes.
But they express a very, not just like a, hey, this is problematic. Can we rebut this? No, he says there needs to be a quick and devastating takedown of this declaration. And he goes so far as to call the epidemiologists fringe, which you can look into the background of them on your own, but they're not fringe. They're from Harvard. They're from Stanford.
Well, and he's calling out a Nobel Prize winner and lumping him in with what he is calling fringe and saying that they need to take him down. It's like, why? You are actively trying to diminish freedom of speech and freedom of information. I mean, we all know why, but it's still chilling. It's chilling when you have hard proof.
Yeah.
When you're just, you're labeled a conspiracy theorist and you're just passing around ideas and following the money and going, what's going on here? Or even following the organizations and seeing what all they're involved in and why they might have the motivations that they have. You kind of go, well, I put that together. But to see it written out in plain English is like, whoa.
Yeah.
That is next level terrifying.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of impressed that this email could even be retrieved with a FOIA. With how corrupt and rotten everything is, I'm surprised that the FOIA process still seems to be working, at least sometimes.
Whoever approved this was like, we need this out in the world.
Yeah. So obviously that just sort of adds to the pile of evidence that these people do not have our best interests in mind, that they will reject anyone that goes against their preferred approach to the pandemic. Even no matter how smart those people are, no matter how many smart people sign on to a plan, they will coordinate government resources to smack it down.
Yeah. That's terrifying.
It is terrifying. All right, I think that's enough COVID.
It's an exhausting topic.
Yeah, it is very exhausting. We're entering the 3rd year of COVID, the 3rd year.
Well, so you remember when all this happened and, it was like right when 15 days or so the spread had just been announced and we were talking about potential detriments that it was going to cause or potential failings of a lockdown. And I explicitly said that people who are isolated for too long were going to kill themselves. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
What did we see?
Yes.
Just want to say, a lot of common folk saw all of this coming.
Yes.
I am not an exception. I'm not an exceptionally intelligent person. I just have common sense, I think, and I can follow things to their logical end. And a lot of people in this nation are like that, and they still went along with it.
I think if I'm being charitable, I think what I could say is that there's just such a cultural divide that the people that are proposing these lockdowns as a means of getting through the pandemic are the same people that their livelihoods aren't going to be destroyed. They can work remotely.
Right.
If you're just a blue collar worker, you can't do your job remotely. If you're a welder, if you work on a factory floor, if you work at a meat processing plant, even if you're like a hospital worker or a nurse or something, you cannot do your work remotely. You have to physically be in a place with other people doing your work. And, you could say that, I guess, again, to be charitable, I think you could just say that there's a huge blind spot in our ruling class that they can make policies that seem reasonable because it doesn't affect them too much. They might not be able to go to the grocery store without a mask, or maybe they have to order their groceries, whatever. But the problem is, that's a luxury that those people have. Not everyone can order their groceries.
Right.
Not everyone can just stay home and log in to Zoom meetings and talk all day and get paid $400,000 like Dr. Fauci. And I think that's just a huge cultural divide, and I'm sure that plays a part in this disastrous policy, doesn't it? I mean, how do you bridge that disconnect between the ruling class and the people that are common folk?
Well, and there is going to be a section of the population who come from white-collar families, who work a white-collar job, who've never had to work a blue-collar job, who've never had to be in a place working physically with people. Their job has just never required it, and nobody in their family has ever done work like that. And so they just cannot conceptualize why this is so hard. And that might be charitable also, but I think that's just, like we talked about, self-preservation last week, and this goes along with self-preservation. Like, if it doesn't affect you greatly, you have a hard time seeing how it affects anybody greatly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a good point. Yeah, it's just like at a certain point, you just get to the point where you're so insulated that you don't even have anyone in your family that works.
Exactly, and it makes it difficult to empathize with people who have to go to their physical job.
Yeah.
So,
all right, should we wrap this up with something fun?
Oh, sure. Is this a fun topic?
Yeah, well, I don't know. You picked it. It's vasectomies.
I mean, it's funny, kind of.
Well, let's see. What does this say?
So this is from the Post Millennial, and this says, American men seek vasectomies, quote, as an act of love in the face of pro-life legislation. And the subheadline is, one man compared getting a vasectomy to the COVID vaccination. Quote, the procedure was a total relief, almost like the COVID shot, like I'm safe now.
Okay.
So moving right along, this same man with this shot, or with the quote about the COVID shot, his name is Andy Gress, and he said, I wanted to man up. Gress and his wife Erin already had 4 children, and he made the appointment on World Vasectomy Day.
Wow, these people are in a cult.
I just want to say, but also, you wanted to man up? You have 4 children. Isn't that man enough?
Yeah, I mean, don't most men get vasectomies after they're done having children anyway?
Yeah, I'm like, I didn't think this was like a heroic statement.
Yeah.
Like, they don't want to have a child when they're 60, so they get a vasectomy, you know what I mean?
That guy's story doesn't sound, particularly interesting or unique.
Also, you scheduled your appointment on World Vasectomy Day. Yeah. How many brownie points are you looking to score here?
I kind of want to see a picture of this guy because I think like he could be the poster soy boy, maybe.
I'm picturing somebody who's mostly bald, maybe some hair on the sides, a creepy goatee, and really thick frame glasses.
Okay. Sandals or no sandals?
Sandals with socks.
Oh, okay.
And like the angled photo to hide his neck fat.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was thinking more of a guy who is balding, socks with sandals, but maybe thinner, maybe meek, maybe kind of like just like does whatever people tell him to do.
His wife wears the pants.
Yeah,
in the relationship.
total pushover.
Yeah.
It could be any one of those guys.
Anyway, I had to include this top paragraph because it's ridiculous. So the article goes on to say, another man looked to have a quote, vasectomy passport from his doctor so he could prove to his wife that he was no longer capable of reproduction.
Whoa, wait a minute. For a second, wait. You have to, when you're going to a vasectomy, there's such a risk that your wife won't believe that you did what you said you did, that you need to prove it to her. Wow, this guy is a soy boy. I think we nailed it.
Well, this is a different guy than the previously quoted one. But also, the coming off of the COVID topic, like we are coming into such a paper-full society where it's like everything you do has to have papers attached to it. It's like, please give me a passport for my vasectomy so I can prove to anybody who asks that I had this medical procedure done. Which, don't you get paperwork for that anyway? Like post-op paperwork? So why would you need a vasectomy passport?
And also, why do you need to prove it to somebody but your wife? Like, why do you need to prove it to her? Why can't you just say, yeah, the procedure's done?
Have you lied to her a lot? Are you a chronic liar?
Yeah,
or is she just
seriously.
like, bring me the paperwork, bitch?
Are you gonna go hang out with your buddies at the sports bar and be like, y'all got vasectomies? I got mine right here. Like, what are you talking about?
Boys, we all get them? We all get them? We all got them? Anyway, so we're getting into the interesting part now. Those were the two funny parts of the article.
Oh, it doesn't get funnier?
Not really. So kind of like in an ironic way, it's funny.
Okay.
So it goes on, it says, in response to some of the laws restricting abortion, Democrat legislators have begun to enact laws to hold fathers accountable for creating children. This is something that they believe is an edgy pushback, but is actually exactly what GOP lawmakers would want as well. Men and women to be responsible for their reproduction. Pennsylvania's state representative Chris Rabb, a Democrat, proposed a, quote, wrongful conception bill that would hold a man accountable for, quote, demonstrated negligence toward preventing conception during intercourse.
So that's an interesting statement, because if you're having sex, isn't that just negligence generally? Like, I mean, if you're not intending to have a child.
Yes, it's negligence, but also if you're having sex, the point of it is to conceive a child.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
if you're engaged in the act without wanting the
child.
intended outcome,
Right.
is that not negligence? I mean,
I think by definition it's negligence.
It's a strong word, but you get my point.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like you are engaging in an act which is intended to produce an outcome, but you don't want to produce that outcome. Now, you can be careful, but
you're still intentionally participating.
right, exactly. So it's like,
Yeah. But let's just move on. So the bill would also require mandatory vasectomies for men over the age of 40 or who have already fathered 3 children, whichever comes first. Now,
Wait.
on its... What?
oh, mandatory?
Mandatory is scary, but I don't think there's anything wrong with men over 40 wanting vasectomies.
Right.
Because you're probably too old for an infant. You don't have the energy for an infant. And if you've already fathered children, just because you can't doesn't mean you should. Like, no 40-year-old man wants a baby. They just don't. Unless they have like a 21-year-old wife and they're like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But mandatory is the scary part, right?
Yes.
I don't think the bill should require that because we're starting to sound a lot like China.
Yeah, we don't want to be like China.
Yeah.
I mean, we do in some ways, but not in most
Not
ways.
in that way. So women would be able to take civil action against those who wrongfully impregnate them during the act of sex, which is the means by which humans reproduce.
I love this sauciness coming out of this.
So,
Whoever wrote this.
I know. What do you mean wrongfully impregnate? You're having sex. If you get pregnant, you accomplish the goal.
Yeah.
There's not a wrong... I mean, I get it.
Unless it's rape or something.
Right.
Which
Rape
would
or
be,
incest or... yeah.
obviously there has to be criminal penalties for that. But you could also say, well, we're going to strengthen the civil penalties too and make this guy like pay for...
I mean, I was going to say, unless the civil action is over like full-time custody, like if the woman legally can't get an abortion and has to have the child but doesn't want the child, maybe the civil action is that the father has to take over complete custody or has to pay like an exorbitant amount of child care support, which technically they have to do anyway.
Right.
So I don't know exactly what that civil action would entail. I guess it depends on what your lawyer says, what your lawyer advises, and what the court is willing to hear. But It goes on, a Texas doctor at the Austin Urology Institute said there was a recent uptick in men seeking vasectomies. After Texas passed a law limiting abortions past 6 weeks gestation, 15% more men scheduled vasectomy appointments. Good to see you taking responsibility, men.
Yes.
Good job, Jen.
Well, I mean, and it's like, you're not going to find a single Republican that's opposed to this.
No.
If men who are
No, not at
likely
all.
to pressure women into getting abortions are getting vasectomies instead, good. More babies are going to be alive and stay
Because you
alive.
know what? More babies are going to be alive and stay alive, and less women are going to have lasting psychological trauma.
Yeah,
Because if you're just shooting blanks, that doesn't cause anybody trauma.
right.
Because you don't want a baby, and she doesn't want an abortion. So
There you go.
there you go.
And I think vasectomies are reversible too. So it's not like
They're
a life.
reversible once.
Okay. So it's not a
So-
totally life-altering decision.
Right.
You get one redo.
Right. So if you have a vasectomy, you can reverse it. But if you get another vasectomy after the reversal, you can't reverse it.
Okay. Interesting. I would have
But
to.
I don't know that anyone's going around willy-nilly and being like, reverse it, enact it, reverse it, enact
Yeah.
it. Like, I think,
I mean, if you're doing it based on abortion policy, that's probably the incorrect way of making that decision for yourself. But if you're just generally done having children,
right. Like if you are the age 40 or you already have 3 kids and you don't want any more.
Right, exactly.
And you've talked about it with your wife, you know.
But hey, if you're a man and you say I never want kids and you're young, you do you. It's better than you
It
getting
is
someone
reversible
pregnant.
once though. So if you decide that you don't and you're young and then you end up getting married and then maybe in your 30s you go, one wouldn't be so bad. You can reverse it.
Right.
It's not impossible.
But if you don't reverse it, then think of all the abortions that are not going to happen.
Exactly. A family doctor in Boston, Sarah Miller, said, quote, "It's outrageous that we don't have more contraceptive options for people with man parts."
Wow.
I thought that part was funny. There's even a misguided sense that birth control is not a man's job, that men can't be trusted or that they would never be interested, and that has led to a lack of funding and development, Miller said.
I don't know. Is that a thing that birth control is not a man's job? Isn't the man the one that's very concerned about that?
You would think, but I don't know, because I think there's been a huge cultural shift as far as like women being worried about having babies also. But I think her main point here is like there's no oral contraceptives that men can take, or there's no like topical contraceptive other than condoms or abstinence.
Mm-hmm.
Or a vasectomy, I guess, is technically a contraceptive, but it's kind of like there are contraceptive options. A lot of shitty men just don't want to use them.
Well, maybe don't date those men then.
But that's the other thing, right? Is like you are choosing who you're dating, you're choosing who you're sleeping with. If he is like, no, you're responsible solely, maybe don't sleep with that guy.
Yeah.
Because I don't think he's the most trustworthy person. If he's already putting all of that responsibility on you as the woman, like you better be taking your pill or have an IUD or whatever, it's like, buddy, man up. Get a life.
Man up indeed.
I don't know. I think there's one more screenshot.
Nope, that's it.
That's it. Yeah, I don't know. It is good to see Democrats pushing like bills that actually Republicans want to see happen.
Reduce
and
abortion.
that actually, one, it reduces abortion, and two, it actually creates a more supportive environment for an incoming infant. So, because if you can file a civil lawsuit against the father who wrongfully impregnated you or whatever, and you can get a good lump sum of money or shared custody or something, shared burden of a baby, that's good news too, because right now I don't know. Well, I don't know. That's hard to say because like child support laws are already pretty strict in a lot of places. So I don't know how much this will help. But the fact that there is even emphasis on men being held responsible for fatherhood is, I think, the white pill in all of this.
Yeah.
How we go about that, I think, is still up to debate. But the fact that it's being talked about at all is really good.
Yeah, obviously mandatory vasectomies is a terrible idea.
That's a scary thing to do.
But yeah, if you're just going to just make men generally more responsible for their actions or equally responsible or whatever, that's fine. If you make a dumb decision, you're going to get stuck with the consequences. And it's not like, having an unexpected presidency. Wow. Wow, we do have an unexpected presidency, don't we? I don't even remember what I was going to say, so I'm just going to drop it there.
That's fine.
Cool.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Good stuff.
that's Take Your Medicine. Again, I'm Jacob.
And I am Sadie.
And Happy New Year. We'll see you next week.